Welcome to Keep Smiling, the e-commerce customer experience podcast. Selling products online is challenging and can lead to poor customer experiences. Each episode, we explore how entrepreneurs and organizations in e-commerce are delivering delightfully unexpected experiences to their shoppers and customers. Amazon, Shopify, artificial intelligence. We'll discuss what matters today and what you can do to build a better e-commerce business. We'll show you how. Today's episode is the first in a two-part series about customer service on Amazon. Find the companion part in our show notes at sellersmile.com/keepsmiling. Hello, listeners, and thank you for streaming Keep Smiling, the e-commerce customer experience podcast. I'm your host, Ty Walters, and joining me today is my co-host. Say hello, Michael Melgar.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Michael and I are the co-founders of SellerSmile. We specialize in customer service for e-commerce businesses, which includes emails, returns, and reputation management. And in today's episode 2, we're going to cover what exactly is customer service on Amazon, distinguishing that from Amazon customer service, where buyers go to get help. This is actually sellers performing their own customer service through Amazon's platform. To start off today's episode, I'd like to read a quote from a Salesforce article defining customer service. They say, customer service is the support you offer your customers both before and after they buy and use your products or services that helps them have an easy and enjoyable experience with you. I wanted to bring up this definition because in today's episode, we wanted to focus specifically on customer service. Those points where you as a seller are offering direct support with Amazon's buyers, and this could be again before or after they buy. The intent behind that interaction is to help these buyers have a better experience. They're already having a great experience shopping on Amazon. How can your input and your activity, your contribution make that better for them? So on today's show, number 1, we'll touch on the true meaning of customer service on Amazon. Number 2, we're going to cover the main touch points of customer service on Amazon. Each one of these touch points that we cover today are deep enough and important enough for an entire episode in and of themselves, which is very likely to happen. So again, another reason to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch up once we do a deep dive into those topics. And finally, if you sit through the episode with us, at the end, we're going to tell you how to get free access to a list of our favorite Amazon-friendly messaging templates, email scripts that you can use on Amazon in different situations. And we're going to cover those situations coming up. So, Michael, thank you for joining. How are you feeling today?
I'm really excited to touch on today's topic because I almost forgot just how much is involved with customer service on Amazon. We touched on this on the first episode on how we've seen how customer service on Amazon can be almost oversimplified, right? Where we just talk about like answering messages, and that specific touch point is really simple, but there's so many other aspects to customer service on Amazon that as we were kind of putting together the outline for the episode, I was just so excited to really talk about because, it's so easy to forget, but it's just so important.
Right. And because of the fact that it covers so many areas that aren't typically highlighted by sellers on Amazon, we had to actually control how much content was getting into this outline because the episode just kept growing and growing. So that's pretty strong evidence there's a lot to talk about regarding customer service on Amazon. Customer service on Amazon is for third-party sellers. There's a distinction between third-party sellers who are using Amazon's platform and fulfillment systems to sell their products versus first-party sellers who are selling to Amazon in more of a wholesale way, and then Amazon becomes the seller, the fulfiller of those products. Third-party sellers have a bit more responsibility when it comes to running their store and managing their customer service. And recently, Amazon and Jeff Bezos released their letter to shareholders, and it's in just the start of Q2 in 2019. And Jeff made a remark that third-party sellers are kicking our first-party butt badly. And if you dive into that SEC document, you'll see that the growth of third-party selling on Amazon has far outpaced even Amazon's own brands and own growth. So it's quite extraordinary what's happening there.
If you're a third-party seller, you should really give yourself a pat on the back.
Exactly. This is unprecedented times for e-commerce in general, especially those sellers that are participating as a third-party seller. But let's get into what does customer service on Amazon mean? Since it's not for first-party sellers, what does it mean for third-party sellers? And we're going to include some links to these articles in the show notes. But there's an article on Amazon entitled FBA Customer Service. And Amazon says that for orders From the Amazon website that Amazon fulfills, we will manage all customer service associated with fulfillment of your products in the program. Now, Amazon is drawing a line between which types of cases their customer support team are going to field, and then which cases are the responsibility of the seller to maintain. And Amazon goes on to say, our online return center provides customers with help pages and details about how to contact us. If the customer wants to return a product, we direct the customer to our online return center. Now, one of the things not mentioned in this description is that when it comes to product-specific inquiries, if a buyer has a question about the size, the color, the use of your product, Amazon almost would prefer that the seller themselves are responding to those questions. In my mind, Amazon is acknowledging that the seller is the subject matter expert behind the brand and behind the products, so they're in a much better position to provide an excellent answer. It's a better customer experience if you're getting that answer directly from the sellers. Now, Michael, as you know, we still see return-related, refund-related inquiries coming through the buyer-seller messaging interface, even though supposedly Amazon is intending those questions to be handled by their own support team. So somehow sellers are circumventing that process.
We've actually gotten questions from sellers that we work with about this before where like, well, I see this option for Amazon handling my customer service. What's this in reference to? And, it's something interesting that despite, even if you have that setting enabled, if you are an FBA seller, you're still going to get those questions that Amazon's not going to field. And in fact, we might even get questions about, how do I return this? Or, hey, what happened with my refund? Or, hey, I need to change the credit card on file. These are still things that are going to come to you, even though Amazon's technically supposed to be handling them. So how you handle those interactions can make a difference as well.
So now that we know who customer service on Amazon is for, Michael, tell me a little bit about your understanding of customer service on Amazon and why it's important and how sellers should be thinking about this.
So it's really funny because, and we're going to actually go over this a little bit later, but if you look at Amazon's leadership principles, they talk about starting with the customer. It kind of goes back to this whole customer-centric, customer-focused environment that is Amazon and the type of urgency that creates, right? So in this environment that Amazon's created, Amazon shoppers want instant gratification. Every touch point that a customer has with you as a seller or with Amazon directly is extremely important. And there's many different places where that occurs. But, kind of like starting at the top, going back to the sense of urgency, right? The reason why the company that Ty and I created, SellerSmile, even came to be was because of the urgency behind Amazon's 24-hour SLA. They wanted customers to be responded to within the 24-hour timer. And if you haven't responded within that time, you would see a big red over SLA message on your buyer messages interface. And so it goes back to the fact that Amazon shoppers want instant gratification. They are paying extra for things like Amazon Prime. And this brings this whole new standard of customer service in the e-commerce world. I feel like prior to Amazon, there wasn't this same sort of emphasis and focus on this sort of granular level. And with Amazon, there's like I mentioned, the SLA, there's product reviews, there's seller feedback, return to satisfaction. There's all these things that are influencing a shopper's purchase on Amazon. And, I guess to kind of wrap up my thoughts on it is that these shoppers, you have to remind yourself, are actually Amazon's customers. They're not really your customers. And there's a reason why they don't allow you to have their buyer email address or they kind of limit your interaction to be within buyer messaging. All of this really adds extra pressure and just drives home the idea of how important they see it on their end.
Yeah, that pressure is real. And we started SellerSmile specifically for Amazon customer service. And of course, we've branched out since then to multi-channel customer service. But Amazon represents the largest majority of sales, the largest activity of customer service inquiries. So in order to meet that need, there's pressure because, of course, Amazon does not necessarily need you. Third-party sellers are doing a great job, but if you don't play by Amazon's rules, you could end up getting suspended, having certain restrictions, and of course, that would negatively affect the business. I see customer service on Amazon as uniquely challenging for the aspect, like Michael mentioned, it's urgent and it's constant. I've had the opportunity in various stages to work in a sort of account management role where we're working directly with a seller on their Amazon account, whether that's optimizing their advertising campaigns, working on keyword sourcing, or working on listing optimization, even creating enhanced brand content. Each one of those steps towards improving your presence as a brand on Amazon is very important, but they're all discrete, distinct activities. You can optimize your campaigns and you let them run for a while and ignore them to gather data. You can optimize your keywords, put them in the back end, put them in your listings, your description, your title, and then let it go for a while. However, with customer support, customer service, it's 7 days a week, every day of the year. There's no time off. And of course, the 24-hour rule. The way I see it, though, is for sellers to be successful in this modern e-commerce era where the experience behind a customer is strongly predicated on the speed. We urge sellers to offer better customer service than Amazon can itself. Be above that bar, respond fast, offer comprehensive, friendly answers, and be generous with your policies. There's one story that I want to bring up. I recently started playing the banjo and I wanted to order a hard case for it. So of course I went to Amazon and I found a great deal. The banjo case came to me and the packaging looked good, but when I opened it, took it out of the box, it appeared that it either had been used or damaged in transit. There was some scuffing and some tearing along one of the edges. So the case would still work, but I was dissatisfied. I reached out to the seller. In this case, it was Amazon.com themselves. And the experience I received in that interaction was extraordinary. Amazon offered a free replacement right away and did not require me to return the damaged case. They offered it as an option, but didn't require it as a condition for me receiving this free replacement. So literally now I have 2 banjo cases in my apartment. One of them I don't know what to do with. Maybe I'll send it back. Maybe I'll just keep it for my next banjo. But the point is, offer better customer service than Amazon itself. Mirror some of the policies when you can that they're taking with being very generous with replacements and refunds. And Amazon, we expect, will reward you for those activities.
They didn't even ask you for a picture or anything, did they?
No picture, no explanation. Basically just took my word for it based on the message that I sent them. And I thought that was bold. A lot of times, we see sellers become skeptical of the claims of customers and buyers, like they're trying to get something free for nothing. And of course that happens. But in this case, I wasn't questioned. I wasn't asked to prove my case. And that meant the world to me. It was resolved much faster than I would have anticipated.
And then you went and you took a picture and I remember you put it on your Instagram account, I want to say, right? Like you were so just caught off guard by this experience that you literally took a picture of it and you shared it with all your friends and all these people saw that you had an awesome experience.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. That is the magic in the situation here. Amazon offered me an unexpected experience that was so great that somehow I was moved to share it with my social network. And I think that's the type of activity that all sellers should be thinking about. How can they start to generate that type of activity around their own products by offering these types of policies that are very generous and very customer centric?
I know it sounds a little almost crazy to try to, I guess, compete against Amazon, right, in those types of generous policies. But at the end of the day, Amazon or another seller is going to be your competitor regardless. So this is kind of what your competitors are doing. And you have to put yourself in a relative competitive space in a way that obviously makes sense for your business, but it's still good to remember that this is what's happening.
So now that we've talked a little bit about what customer service on Amazon means and who it's for, I'd like to cover the touch points of customer service on Amazon. So these are the areas that Michael and I are familiar with. They're the places that we interact with customers on a daily basis on behalf of our clients, ranked from most important to least important, or where you can expect to see the most interaction to least interaction. The first one is buyer-seller messages. Buyer-seller messages is Amazon's native emailing platform where third-party sellers can email back and forth with shoppers or with buyers on Amazon. And like we covered before, this is specifically meant to be where shoppers and sellers can discuss specifics about the product. We see buyers many times will contact us through buyer-seller messaging to ask questions about the product. If it's a clothing or some type of apparel item, they'll maybe say, hey, I'm 6'4" and 220 pounds. Will this fit me? Or they'll say, I have this type of device. Will this product be better or will this product be better? So again, we're seeing product-specific inquiries where the seller, the subject matter expert, can help them make an informed choice so they buy the correct thing. There's nothing worse than a seller buying the wrong size, color, design of an item, and then it doesn't work out for them. So it's very important to be active in your buyer seller messaging, directing shoppers and buyers about how to use your products in the best way. Buyer seller messaging tends to be turned on by default when you open your Seller Central account, but I wanted to bring it to your attention that Amazon sellers who are utilizing Amazon's FBA service have the option to go into their settings and actually disable or enable FBA customer service. What this means is that if you enable FBA customer service, all questions, including product-specific inquiries, will be directed towards Amazon FBA customer service specialists. This sounds great, right? Send all my questions to Amazon and they'll take care of it without an extra charge. However, Michael, as you know, sellers that we've talked to that have tried this have complained about it. Maybe the representatives that are answering these product-specific inquiries aren't the best people to be in that role, or they don't have the right knowledge. However it might be, sellers that want to take more control over their brand, sellers that want to be intercepting these questions so they can understand and how to iterate a better product, we recommend them to disable FBA customer service so that all of these product-specific questions get routed to you as the seller.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that you as a business owner, you're going to care more about the types of responses you're giving your buyers than maybe Amazon will care about how you, I guess, want to portray your business, how the types of policies that you want to enact. It's giving responsibility back to you, but it's also giving you the ability to kind of, I guess, like use that as a customer touch point.
Exactly. In an Amazon article entitled Communicate with Buyers Using the Buyer Seller Messaging Service, Amazon points out that this is the preferred way, the only way to communicate with their customers. And we'll talk about a slight alteration to that in a different way to indirectly use this system. But the main point is, this is Amazon's buyer. You don't own the rights to their information. And through buyer seller messaging, it's a secure platform. As you know, we see an encrypted email address when it comes to the Amazon buyers that we correspond with. So we don't have access to their personal account email that's in their shopper account. Either way, there are some guidelines for contacting buyers that Amazon outlines for sellers. Just to read part of a quote here, Amazon says, in general, you can contact a buyer only to complete an order or to respond to a customer service question. These are the two main categories that Amazon deems acceptable to be communicating with a customer. Amazon outlines some things that sellers should not do, saying, if you send a permitted email to an Amazon customer, your message cannot include links to any websites, links to Amazon detail pages or storefronts, seller logos if they contain or display a link to the seller's website, any marketing messages or promotions, any promotions for additional products or referrals to third-party products or promotions. Long story short, Amazon doesn't want you interacting with buyers in a spammy, salesy type of way. This is strictly a place to resolve issues that buyers bring to you or to follow up and to help complete an order. Those are the main two reasons that you should be in there and the only two reasons. Before we transition into some best practices, I did want to make a note about FBA customer service. When we work with FBA sellers who are answering their own product-specific inquiries in buyer-seller messaging, we still divert some of those inquiries and some of those tickets to FBA customer service. When we see inquiries about how to make a return, asking about a refund, the status of a shipment, or any questions about their billing, we have templates that direct them to contact the correct customer service team, which in this case, and for those topics, is FBA customer service. But Michael, give us some ideas about some tips and best practices when it comes to interacting with Amazon's buyers in buyer-seller messaging.
Yeah, so as we've already talked about and touched on, the 24-hour SLA, I think that's kind of like the very first base metric that you have to work to really be on top of. So number one, be faster than 24 hours. So, that might mean you have to put yourself in a position where you are doing a scheduled check-in, or, if you get messages here and there and they're not super common, you don't have to be on top of it all the time, then, maybe just answer them as they come in. But you have to really keep in mind the 24-hour SLA. So it might be various tools that you use maybe externally that could even give you a reminder to go back and check up on this to make sure that it never goes over SLA. Number two, Seller Central does have an option to upload templates. And so even though we always encourage you to use personalized custom language for each response, you could always use a base set of templates as a kind of like a starter to your response. If you find yourself answering the same question more than once, then it's likely that you should probably save it as a template and, keep the core of the instructions as your template, but make sure to customize the greeting, make sure to customize the instructions, maybe more pertain to that exact customer's question, and go from there.
The templates that we've included at the end of this episode will cover some of the most frequent and common situations that we encounter, especially in buyer-seller messaging, but be sure to customize those to your brand's tone and voice. There's nothing worse than using a template that is too rigid and doesn't quite match the feeling that you want to impart to your customers.
Exactly. And, we always have to say it, but put yourself in your customer's shoes. Your customer isn't going to want to receive a robotic response. They want to know that they're talking to a real person. Whenever you have a problem with something that you purchased, you're going to want to talk to someone who's real, who understands the issue, and who's being direct and helpful with their response. So in the same sense, even though we do recommend templates, make sure to customize them for each response and upload them into the Seller Central messaging interface. Number 3, make sure that your responses do not include external links leading outside of Amazon.com. We kind of talked about it earlier in the buyer-seller messaging overview. They do not want you to have any links to third-party sites. Remember, this to them is pertaining specifically to the order or customer service regarding the order, right? So a shopper might even contact you because maybe they want to purchase something from you in the future. Regardless, you cannot, if you offer a warranty, if you offer a download, things like this, anything that could potentially be external, make sure that you are not using an external link to talk about this, because Amazon does scan your messages, and we've seen people get away with it for a little bit, but it's never recommended to practice these sort of gray hat tactics. Make sure that there's no external links in your messages. Number 4, this is kind of I would say maybe a less frequent, but still a very important, useful tip, is that as you sell for a longer period of time, and as you start to maybe get more repeat shoppers, this could become a potential issue where Amazon's interface actually kind of makes this a little bit confusing. But if you are responding to a buyer message, on the right-hand side, if there's an order attached to that customer's message, Amazon displays which order number is associated with that customer's message, and they tell you when it was purchased and what products are purchased. Now, what can happen is if they purchased from you multiple times, there's actually a list of orders that's basically created on that right-hand side menu, and you might not see it until you scroll down. A very common mistake is to accidentally address the customer's issue thinking it's about another order. So they might be like, hey, I never got a refund for this. And you might see a refund, but you're actually maybe referring to another order. So
right.
Just make sure if a customer has made multiple purchases from you, you'll see it on the right-hand side when you're answering the buyer's message. Make sure to scroll down, and that's kind of essentially, it has its own little scroll bar. Make sure to scroll down and double check to make sure that there's not another order that is associated with that buyer's message. One of the best ways to really handle your Amazon buyer-seller messaging is to potentially consider routing your messages to an external ticketing system. Amazon makes this really easy. In your settings, there's something called notification preferences, and a lot of the ticketing systems essentially give you an email address to route your buyer messages to. It's as simple as adding that email address into the notification preferences setting in your Seller Central account. The reason why you would want to consider a ticketing system is because, especially as you continue to grow, it's going to be important that you have some efficient way for team management of your inbound buyer messages. So what I mean by that is, as you start to get maybe 10 plus messages per day, it might be important for you to be able to do things such as assign cases to team members. So maybe you have someone who handles escalations. Maybe you have a certain team member that specializes in certain types of questions. You might want to be able to assign those cases to other team members. And a lot of ticketing systems, Help Scout, Salesforce Desk, Intercom, a lot of these platforms have a system that allow you to assign those things to other members. Another useful team management tool that a ticketing system could allow you to do is adding notes. Let's say, for example, that you maybe perhaps sent a replacement, or maybe this customer has a very specific issue that the next person might be confused about. Go ahead and add some notes into that case, and that will allow the next person who comes to see this case to have a bit more context as to what's going on. Notes tend to be internal, so it allows you to communicate with your team about what's going on with the customer's issue without that customer actually seeing those notes and without it being a public response. Again, that becomes more and more important as you grow and as you begin to have a higher amount of buyer messages. Another reason to consider a ticketing system for your buyer messages is to use it as a tool for learning. So you might be able to learn a lot from the built-in reporting systems that a lot of these ticketing systems have. So for example, ticketing systems allow you to tag cases, and you can use tags as essentially categories. So you might say, if you want to know how often you hear about a certain product defect, you could essentially add a tag for the name of that defect, and at the end of the month, run a report on that ticketing system to see how often you got those interactions. Or you might categorize it a little bit differently. Maybe you want to know how often you get questions about shipping, or how often you get questions about product FAQs. Those are things that you can begin to tag on a case-by-case basis and then run reporting at the end of the month or after a certain amount of time to really learn about how often those categories come up. These are things that can influence your future iterations on your product or your listing information, things like that.
Thank you for bringing that up, Michael. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because currently in Q2 of 2019, Amazon doesn't offer analytics in the Seller Central interface around messaging. There's no way to determine average volume of messages or even to categorize those into different topics. One of my favorite aspects of using a ticketing system is the organization. So this episode is, of course, about customer service on Amazon, but many of the sellers we work with are selling multi-channel on their own website or on other e-commerce marketplaces. Using a ticketing system, they can route all of those communications into one place so they're not signing in to multiple interfaces that all have their own workflows. It's organization and it's clarity that keeps it sane and allows us to do a better job.
Exactly. It allows you to process all messages faster as well. Another quick tip in regards to the best way to manage your buyer messages is to consider your outbound messaging. We're definitely going to do an entire episode on this in the future. So, we'll just cover this very briefly, but your outbound messaging is a way to offer proactive customer service. So if you're part of the Amazon third-party seller ecosystem, you've likely heard of a lot of these systems, things like Feedback Genius, Feedback 5. There's a lot of different platforms that do a lot of the similar services. What they allow you to do is to send an after the sale message to your Amazon customer. And a lot of these platforms connect to Amazon's buyer seller messaging directly. So what it's actually doing is that it's sending those messages to the buyer's encrypted email address. This is a fantastic opportunity to use things like a PDF. If you might want to attach like an infographic with the purchases of a certain product. This is also maybe a perfect time to really introduce yourself, let them know that they can contact you for help should they encounter any troubles, or maybe even give them some updates on their order or anything that's important about that. But lastly, just to kind of wrap up buyer seller messaging, there's a lot of things that are changing on buyer seller messaging. Even in the last 6 months, we're currently in April of 2019. Even in the last 6 months, we've seen buyer seller messaging change at least 2 times since then. We actually created a blog post about this when it first happened. We were talking about when the classic Seller Central buyer seller messaging was going away and how that was going to impact sellers and what that meant for the future of customer service on Amazon. We've seen a lot of developments in that regard where there's a new page on Seller Central called Voice of the Customer, which is still, as of April, still in beta. And we're still seeing developments in ways how Amazon is introducing things like return to satisfaction rating and things like that. So we anticipate that there's going to be a lot more updates coming in the future.
It's exciting to see Amazon making changes to the buyer seller messaging platform. It's a sign that either Amazon knows it needs a lot of improvement, or they're understanding it as an area where improving that experience for shoppers and sellers can improve Amazon itself. There's a lot of friction that tends to happen with customer service inquiries and issues, and I'm sure Amazon has a lot of ideas about how to improve that. A subtopic of buyer seller messaging I wanted to bring up is Amazon multi-channel fulfillment orders. We call them MCF orders. Amazon describes this as a program within Fulfillment by Amazon. Amazon stores your inventory in fulfillment centers, and when items sell on Amazon, your own site, or another e-commerce site, Amazon picks, packs, and ships them to your customers. The most common use case we see with MCF orders is maybe an integration with a Shopify site. So a sale happens on your website, your Shopify store, and that's integrated with Amazon MCF to where Amazon will take over the fulfillment of that order. The important part to note about this is that we use multi-channel fulfillment orders as a way to send out replacements to customers. If a customer receives a defective item, maybe the customer purchased the wrong item, depending on which seller we're working with, they have a policy that allows us to send a free replacement to this customer using Amazon MCF. We have the ability to send that order to the customer with expedited or regular shipping. And we've included this under the buyer-seller messaging heading or section because when we send off these MCF orders, we have the choice to input the Amazon encrypted buyer email address. That's important then because Amazon will send a shipment notification to that customer. It is another aspect to the thread of the conversation when we're trying to provide a resolution via buyer-seller messaging. One of the most important parts to note about multi-channel fulfillment is that Amazon FBA customer service will not help service your multi-channel fulfillment orders or inquiries surrounding MCF orders. So another reason we recommend sellers to take control of their own customer service and their own buyer-seller messaging. So when it comes to sending off MCF orders, they can control that experience from beginning to end to make sure that their customer leaves happy.
And there's various opportunities with MCF orders as well. Whenever we send out a multi-channel fulfillment order as a replacement, what we've actually started to do at SellerSmile is that we add the letter R and a dash, and then we take the customer's original order number and add it to that. So if the customer's original order number is 12345, the replacement would be R12345. The reason why we do that is because at the end of the month, you can use that information to research later. So you might be able to download a report of all your orders and see how many of your orders were replacements. You can use this with your distributor later. You might say, wow, we had X amount of returns that we had to issue a replacement for this month for this product. And these are the types of takeaways that you can make by using a system like that.
There's a lot of promise with Amazon MCF orders, and I'm sure Amazon will continue to roll out different ways to make that replacement situation even better. At the beginning of the episode, we talked about free templates to use with these various customer service touchpoints on Amazon. To get access to those templates, go to sellersmile.com/keep smiling. There, find episode 2, and you'll gain access to that PDF. Use our templates as a starting place, but when you see an opportunity to improve a description, to improve a greeting or a sign-off, be sure to take it. It's the constant iteration that has made Amazon what it is today, and it's the exact process that you need to take to improve your brand and grow your business.
We have a quote here from Amazon.jobs. This is a part of their leadership principles that I think really drives home this message. They have the concept of customer obsession, and they define that as leaders start with the customer and work backwards. They work vigorously to earn and keep customer trust. Although leaders pay attention to competitors, they obsess over customers.
Thanks for joining us, Michael, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, guys.
On the next episode, Michael and I will cover part 2 of customer service on Amazon. If you found this conversation valuable, hit subscribe so you never miss a show. Thanks again, and keep smiling.